I think that blogging is the most wonderful thing, especially food blogging. I love how you can sit down with a computer and a camera and your creativity, and you can actually create a profession out of it. I think that that's just an amazing, wonderful thing. And there's really no other job like it. But I also think that you have to make it to where it's a lifestyle and not this job that you're working 60, 70 hours a week.
That was Mariah Mercurio, and we're talking about secrets of a first-year blogger on episode 49 of the Chopped podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. Thanks for joining me today for the 49th episode of the Chopped podcast. You know, this is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. Each week, my goal is to share thoughts, stories, interviews, everything related to food blogging so that we can all learn together about what works with food blogging and maybe even a little bit about what doesn't. Do you have a word for the year? I know that's kind of a crazy question, so let me explain. I mean, we all have goals that we focus on, and that's great, right? But what I've found great pleasure in is having a word that I'm focusing on. I spent some time reflecting on what would be the perfect word for me this year. And do you want to know what I landed on? I actually shared some of that on Facebook. It's for the journey I was going through in picking the right word. I had a list and, was looking at different words and it was fun to see the feedback everybody gave. But the word that I finally chose was abundance. I like this word for several reasons, but first of all, because it just really connected with me. I don't know why, but it did. And I knew I wanted a word to show the emotion of what I want in my life. And I have so much that I'm thankful for, including you. And so having a word like abundance that I can spend time reflecting on each day has been really amazing. If I start to feel stressed or frustrated, I close my eyes and I think about abundance. And I really feel connected with it. It's almost like vibrating with it. I'm sorry, does that sound too woo-woo? But it really is how I feel. And I've been acting kind of like, I've actually been acting like a preteen girl who's in love with the word. So I've been writing it down in my journal just to kind of, again, stay connected with this word. And I use different colored pens, and sometimes I'll use different styles of writing, like, those big fat letters that almost look like clouds. And I'll write the word that way. I'll use different kinds of writing for it just to kind of be playful with it. Also, I think there's some sort of meditation state about drawing. I mean, there actually, believe it or not, there are adult coloring books that help you kind of get into that meditative state while you're drawing. But I find just drawing this word works for me, and I, put colors around it and things like that. It is a stress reliever, and sometimes, blogging can be stressful. So it's good to have some opportunities to break some of that stress in the middle of the day. And also, I've now looked at the word so much that I realize that if you break it up, it says bun dance. And, who doesn't need more dancing in our days? And if it makes me happy, especially. So so every now and then I'll put on a song. I close the door so Sean doesn't watch me and start laughing at me. And I do a little dancing in my office. Seriously, it makes me happy. And you know what? We all need some happy in our day, so that's good. Just as an aside, my daughter Addie and I talked about this too, and she picked a word for the year. Her word is scrappy. I really like that one. So I think it just says a lot about, like determination, but at the same time, finding ways to make it work. It's a pretty cool word. So why don't we start talking about food blogging? Does that sound good? Today's guest is Mariah Mercurio. I met Mariah at the Food Blog Success Summit back in October, but she also reached out to me before the conference. So we've been communicating for several months now, and I just love Mariah, and meeting her at the conference was so fun. She has a real passion for food blogging, and you can tell that when we talk. I can't wait for you to listen to this interview. You're going to love it. And we share more about the Food Blog Success Summit in the interview. And just so you know, I was so impressed with the success that Mariah achieved in her first year of blogging. That's why I reached out to her and asked her if she'd be on the podcast. And I know several of you have asked for advice on how to gain more momentum in your first year. So I really feel like the things that Mariah has to say will be really helpful. I think you're going to love it. Even if you're not a first-year blogger, there's some great stuff in today's interview because we talk about social media sharing, the way she schedules her work, working with brands, authenticity, and just a whole lot more. So why don't we get right to it? Today's intro shout out is to Julia of Jules Kitchen, who said she was listening to the Chopped podcast at the gym. How fun is that? Oh, wait, is the gym fun? I'm taking a spin class twice a week at 6 a.m., and so sometimes I am just not so sure. But I agree with you, Julia. Listening to podcasts definitely makes it better. Okay, everyone, in honor of Julia, get out those spandex, head up to the gym, get out those earbuds, and let's talk about all things food blogging and so much more. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have Mariah Mercurio of the site Mariah's Pleasing Plates on the show today. Mariah, welcome to the Chop Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Marley. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you, Mariah. I'm really looking forward to talking with you today about the strategies you've used to create a super successful year in your very first year of blogging. I'm just, so excited about that. And, I was really pleased to meet you at the Chopped conference, and you and I have been talking by email as well. And I'm just really, looking forward to all of this discussion today. But first, I'd love to take, just a step back and let's just, if you could tell everybody why it is that you started your food blog.
Okay, well, I've always loved food. Food has just been, my mom, we had 6 kids in my family, so she was very busy, and so it was whatever she could get on the table, but I, around like 13 or 14, just started saying, hey, let me do the grocery shopping. And I would sit down with all these cookbooks and write out my menu and my store list and come home, or she'd have to drive me because I was only 14, and make everything. And I loved having my family say, oh, this was so good, or don't make that again, make this again. And it was just really fun. So, and then as I got older and busier, I didn't cook as much, and I had never heard of food blogs or anything like that. I did have a Pinterest account and had liked a lot of food blog stuff and didn't even realize that they were food blogs.
Yeah.
And then my friend, right after I'd had my daughter, she was 3 months old, said, hey, I'm blogging, and I think I'm going to stop teaching. And she had worked really hard to become a teacher. And I said, really, how are you going to do that? And she had said that she had been so successful with it. And so we sat down and talked, and I went home that day and was like, okay, how do I figure out how to blog? And I wasn't a teacher, so I knew that that wasn't the route. And my husband and I were sitting at the table, and he had said, well, do you think that people do food? And I said, I don't know, but that would be perfect for me. And so that day I just got on the computer and started looking around, and I said, there's a lot of people doing this. And there's like a whole thing. And he's like, well, you think they make money? And that day I stumbled upon Pinch of Yum, and I was like, well, these people do. They make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, let's give it a try. So we just, I found a couple ebooks, and I got started on a blog spot, and it took me like 2 weeks. I hadn't even put up a post to realize that that wasn't going to work. And so had to get everything switched over, found a new person to put together my blog, and I got up on WordPress and never looked back.
Wow, that's exciting. Do you mind sharing? Were the ebooks that you got very helpful?
Oh my goodness, so helpful. So the first one was so interesting, actually, that I had come across a blog called Chelsea's Messy Apron, and I said, this is so cute. I wonder if she makes money. I love all of her recipes. And I emailed her, and I don't ever think she got the email. It went to spam. And so then I kept an eye on it, and a couple weeks later, she released an ebook called How I Made 40,000 my first year blogging. And so I bought that ebook, and that was really helpful if you're really a beginner in blogging. It broke down, to get WordPress, what plugins to get, even kind of broke down some of her processes of how she made her schedule, and different places to get sponsored posts when the time was right, setting up social media, just all the really basic stuff that you need when you don't know anybody in food blogging.
Yeah.
So I got that one, and then I got the Tasty Food Photography ebook from Pinch of Yum, which I know is really popular in the food blogging community. And then I got a couple of other food photography books. And I started off right away with I guess it's a basic professional camera. It's the Rebel T5i, I
Yes.
believe.
The Canon.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, the Canon. So my husband bought that right away, and it came with two kit lenses, and we started food photography. I started practicing while he was away at school at night, and I remember my first like shoot was on like ugly kitchen counter with the overhead lights on at like 6 o'clock at night with no natural light. And I was like showing him and I was like, they're so ugly. Why don't my food pictures look like everybody else's? I was very frustrated. So if you're new with food photography, um, do not shoot with overhead lights. Shoot during the day. And the other big thing was getting the right lens. I had no idea
Yeah.
what lens to shoot with, and I was wondering how to get that bokeh, which is the blur in the
Yes.
background. That is really famous in all the food pictures on Pinterest. And so we got the 50 mm 1.8 lens,
Yeah.
and it's really inexpensive. I think it's like $100, and that just changed everything. Like right away,
Yeah.
um, that was a huge change. So, and then just messing around with your settings and figuring out there's only two or three different settings, and you just keep messing with them. You don't have to be a pro to figure it out. You just got to go play.
Yes, and that's the nice thing about a digital camera is that you can play, and you're not, wasting film. You
Absolutely.
just delete them if you don't like them.
Yes, yes. And you are not going to like things sometimes. And the other thing that I thought was really important was the tripod, because it's so
Yeah.
difficult to style and shoot at the same time. So it's nice to just style to the camera and have it on a tripod in the beginning. And then as you get more comfortable, kind of, be able to carry around your camera and shoot that way. But
Another thing I like about having a tripod is that, you can shoot as it starts to get like, let's say you're fixing dinner and or if you're fixing it later in the day, you can shoot in less light by putting it on a tripod and lowering the f-stop. And that just makes it, the shot still looks okay.
yes, absolutely. And that was one of the biggest things for us with the
Yeah.
lighting, because we shoot in a pretty low
Yeah.
shutter speed. And
Yes.
in order to handheld, it really needs to be above 80 shutter speed.
Yes.
So we usually shoot in like 30 to 60 just for our lighting. But we're in
Yeah.
Southern California, so we have really good lighting, luckily, most of the time, which is
Yeah.
really nice.
The other day, Sean and I were working on a shot together, and our shot had a 4-second exposure. Or actually, I think it was 5-second exposure.
Oh my goodness.
That's a long time. That's how dark it was outside. But we had the shot looked great by the time it was done. So I was really happy with
Do
it.
you use over or artificial lights?
We have artificial lights and we use those sometimes as well. I mean, our preference is for natural light, but it's really nice to have some artificial lights. You know what we did? We actually went to Costco and they have one of those, it's like an LED light that you could probably use out in your garage when you're working on a project. But it's a nice clear light, and we use that, and we'll put a filter in front of it, obviously, and put that on, and it works just fine. It also works for video shoots as well. So
What a great tip.
yeah, thank you. I like cheap.
Yeah, oh, well, me too.
Yeah, I think that thing was like $30, so it was pretty cool.
I'm going to have to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I could find the link to it and leave that on the show notes page if anybody else is interested. But it's a great light. We really enjoy working with it. How about you? Do you ever shoot with lights?
No, I haven't. And there has been very stressful times
Yeah.
where I'll have client work due. And if the lighting isn't right, I'm like, sorry, we have to cancel our plans tomorrow. I have to stay home and shoot. And
Yeah.
so I've definitely thought about investing for sure. But I haven't made the leap yet. I love the natural light.
Yeah.
But I definitely am thinking about it.
There are some kits that you can get that would make your shot at night look almost as natural. I mean, just you would have a hard time telling. They do a really good job, and I've forgotten the name of them off the top of my head, but you can get them on Amazon, and it's like maybe $120. It's not too bad.
Oh, good to know. I'll have to look those up.
Yeah, I'll if I can think of the name of it, I'll put it in the show notes page as well. But yeah, it's it's good to have that flexibility. Like you say, it kind of takes the stress out if you've got a photo that's due in the next couple of days and you've got what I hate is when the recipe is done and it's looking gorgeous and you're running out of light. It's so stressful to
It is so stressful. For me, it's with real food, it's the like when I say real food versus baked goods because
Yes.
they don't really change.
Yeah.
I get so stressed out because I have all these different things that I'll do as far as like with soups, you stick the
Yeah.
bowl underneath the soup to get it all the ingredients on the top, and there's all these
Yes.
little hacks, and then it starts to sink, and I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me.
Yes. Or the lettuce starts to wilt or whatever. If you've got the recipe looking just right, you want it.
Yeah, and then you have to go rebuy everything because
Yes.
for me, with baked goods, if I shop earlier in the week and I wait till later in the week to make it, it's not a big deal. But with the green stuff, I always try to make it really the next day so it stays looking really fresh. I used to have mint and cilantro out in the garden outside. It all died, but too busy blogging to go water it.
Yeah, plants like water.
Yeah. So that helped because I would just run out and grab more, green cilantro, and, garnishing really helps make your photos look pretty.
In fact, that's a really good point. I actually keep parsley growing year round inside. I can't, you don't even want to get me started talking about squirrels. I'm a vegan and I love animals, but I just hate squirrels and they eat all my parsley. So I have to bring it inside anyway. But yeah, it's right in the kitchen. So it's easy for me to water it.
Yeah, and then you can grab it and,
Yes.
for photo shoots, it's so
Yes.
convenient.
And
In
it also
between-
kind of looks like cilantro, so you can kind of pass it off. So I'm just saying.
Oh, I've done that lots of times
Yes.
with cilantro versus parsley. Yeah.
We'll have to call this one photography hacks, huh?
Yeah.
How do we get on this? We could talk about photography all day, I'm sure. So let's go on to a couple of things. So you talked about how you started this interest in cooking at an early age, and that sounds really exciting to me, but especially that part where you kind of went away from it for a little bit. So when you started, this interest in creating your own food blog, I guess food had come back in your life as an interest at that point.
Yeah, at that time I was a new mom, and so I would used to work crazy hours, and I've always just been a workaholic. And so I had to slow down. It made me, be home more, and I was with her. And so I've always loved Food Network, even when I wasn't cooking. It was always on, and it's still always on. And so it was really easy to get back into cooking, and it was really fun to start thinking things up. I was really confused when you first start blogging about people's process of, like, were they coming, how often were they going to the grocery store, and how often were they making things? And obviously I figured out right away they weren't just making these things just for dinner and shooting the photos real quick and then popping them up onto their blog. And so I knew that there was some kind of planning involved, and it was really about me finding, okay, how am I going to do this? So I started a list on my phone. There was a list on my phone and a list on my computer, and then I had a paper list. So I had lists, 3 different lists so that I could always write down an idea. And whenever we were at a restaurant, or when I was watching Food Network, or if I was on a different blog or Pinterest and I saw something and felt inspired, then I would just write down whether an idea or just the ingredients, and kind of went from there. And then I would sit down and look at my list of things at the beginning of the week and then choose the things I wanted to make. And I started out with just doing like 3 to 4 recipes a week. And I would only make and shoot 1 recipe a day in the beginning, just because I didn't know how to do anything. So it was like I had to learn. And that was stressful because I had a little 3-month-old that was unpredictable. But my husband had a weird schedule at the time because he worked nights and was at school during the days. And so he was able to help me sometimes. And since then, he's transitioned and graduated and has a full-time job and works regular hours. And so it was just learning. It was a step-by-step process, but it all worked.
So what's one of the things that you think that you like the most about food blogging so far?
I love the relationships and friendships that I've made. The food blogging community is so welcoming. And when you're on the outside, you don't know it yet, but you just get in there and start talking to people. I had more people reach out to me. I was shy and was too scared to reach out to other people. And there's so many Facebook groups, and that's really when, if you're at your starting point of blogging and you're like, okay, I want to start a food blog, but I don't know what to do, reaching out to some food bloggers and getting a part of some of those groups. It's not like you could just search them on Facebook. A lot of them are private, but they're so welcoming once you're in there, and you can learn so many things that you wouldn't have learned. That's like the number one place I learned about advertisements and how to get more sponsored posts. And we'll get on there and say, hey, I'm shooting this today. Do you have a tip for me, or whatever, just anything. So I love that, the community.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so has there been any, like, this is the part I hate about blogging, or just things that are just feel challenging?
I think social media, because believe it or not, has been so hard for me. I've never been a social media person. I don't think before I started blogging that I had touched my Facebook account in months. And I would kind of scroll through Instagram and stuff, but really was really late on that game and never would post anything. So it's taken a lot of work for me to put all the effort into social media and planning out what I'm going to put up. And even sometimes just saying like, okay, I'm a perfectionist, and saying this is good enough. Like, just put this up. This is fine. Or,
Yes.
sharing.
Excellent. So you and I met at the Food Blog Success Summit in October, and I loved meeting you in person. It was so fun, and I was very impressed that you volunteered to be one of the folks that was on the hot seat, which meant that you got to talk about your blog and describe the things that were going well and some of the struggles that you were going through, and got feedback from both our expert team and other bloggers. And I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about that experience and what that was like for you as a blogger.
I was super nervous. I'd never been to a conference before, and I'm so glad that Chopped was my first conference, because everybody was so welcoming. It was a wonderful experience. It was so wonderful to meet you, and all the speakers were awesome. So it was a really, really great experience.
Oh, good.
Going up on the hot seat I was nervous to talk about my blog and feeling like I wasn't sure if I even knew enough about blogging. I was so new. But it was great. Tessa was so helpful, and so was Catherine, and you as well. And to be able to get different eyes on my blog and to see things and say, hey, this may come across this way, and to change this. I think it's important in order to grow, to be able to get feedback from other people. And even though it was scary, it was actually not hard at all. And it was really, I was afraid that I was going to feel like, oh, bad about, I shouldn't have done that, but I didn't. It was all really awesome.
Yeah, it did seem like it was a very supportive environment, that everybody was just out to help everybody else. It wasn't about, oh, you do that. Why would you do it that way? Or,
Yes, absolutely. It was very, very nice to be in such a welcoming environment with so many supportive people. And even though that you all had so much more experience than me, you didn't make me feel that way. So I loved being on there, and then being able to come home and implement those changes and to look at things and to keep all that stuff in mind was really helpful too. So
oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. And it's one of the reasons that I actually thought about asking you on the site today, or on the podcast today, because, you talked about, when you were talking about your blog, you were talking about all the successes that you experienced the very first year that you started. And I know that we have a lot of people who reach out with questions about their first year as blogging, and, they want to feel those kinds of successes coming through for them as well. And I thought I would love to talk with you some more about that. Your first year, I know that you're beyond that point now, but if you can remember back to your first year of blogging and talk a little bit about that. And, like, for example, did you have some goals when you first started your blog, and can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my number one goal, because I was staying home with my daughter and I was on maternity leave when I started, I had to make money. That was like my number one thing. I had to figure out a way to monetize my blog. And I think that a lot of people, if they want to do their blog full time, struggle with that too. And I knew right away that I wasn't going to be able to monetize immediately. And I think that that's so important. When you first start blogging, you have to know that that's not going to come right away. It's not like, you have to have a completely different mindset. When you go in, you have to put in a lot of work and a lot of hours, and the payback comes later. It's not like a 9 to 5 job where you clock in and you leave with X amount of dollars. So for me, I was willing to take the time to work hard for those first 3 or 4 months and not make anything. I actually spent a lot and invested. But after, and I was frustrated with my page views. I didn't understand how to get those up. But my biggest goal was just to create a schedule for myself and to figure out a process. That's what helped me to keep going. So for me to set up a schedule and say, I'm going to shop on this day, I'm going to shoot on these 2 or 3 days. And as you get more into blogging, you learn that there's so many different things that need to be done. And it's so easy to get so overwhelmed. And so for me, it was making lists. And I had told my husband that I would work on this blog for 1 year. And if I hadn't made anything, then I would put it aside. But after 4 months, we started to we got our first sponsored post. It was somebody that reached out to us, and I was um, so happy about it. And then from there, every month, it just kept going and going and going. And my page views have never been high. I've never gone over 200,000 page views. Actually, I don't think I've gone over 150,000 page views. So if you're blogging right now and you're wondering if you can monetize with low page views, you can. You do not have to have 1 million page views to make money. November and December were 2 of our highest months, and I completely was able to replace the income I was making when I was working full time from the blog. So just know it takes time and that you have to continue to put the work in, and it will happen.
That's so great. And so can you talk a little bit about the strategies? Like I heard that your primary goal was monetizing, and you kind of set forth on a plan to do that. But did you have a specific strategy? Like, you were hoping to get high page views, so that high page as in, maybe up to 100,000, so that you could then start reaching out to brands to get sponsored posts?
That's sort of how it started, that I had thought, okay, if I could get to 100,000 page views, that was my number, then I could reach out to brands. But a brand reached out to me before I even got that. And I thought, well, if this brand reached out to me, then maybe I have it in me. So then I started reaching out to brands and had success with that. And a lot of brands won't ask you for your page views. They want to know if sometimes they don't even ask anything. They're just, if you're willing to promote their product for them, they're willing to. I've never had asked to charge, maybe if you were to go in and say, can I have $1,000 for this post? But I set my rates within what I thought that for starting out would be accurate. I didn't shoot super high in the beginning. And there is a lot of different agencies out there that you can apply to be a part of that actually have places to apply for sponsored posts. And then you're not reaching out to any brands, and they will just come back to you and say if you got the post or not. And then you go from there.
That's such a smart way to do it, because that way, of course, it's if you have specific brands you want to work with, and pitching to them is a great idea. But to have a group that you can be a part of, like some kind of PR group, and they're coming to you with, here are the 5, brands that we're working with this month, and you can, participate in those. That's such a smart way to do it.
And there's a lot of those out there. And when you're starting out, that's a great place to start, because you get to get the practice at doing sponsored posts, and you don't have the pressure of being your own PR person and having to represent yourself to brands. So it's a great place for bloggers to start.
Another thing I like about that one is that the brands are a little bit more educated. Like if you're working with a brand that has not worked with a lot of bloggers, you have to kind of bring them along a little bit, and you don't have to worry about that. And when you're working with a brand that's already involved in some kind of campaign with a PR firm.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And you learn, that's something, it's like a learning curve trying to get somebody. So
did you ever have situations where there were brands that were reaching out to you that you were maybe not so interested in working with, or did that not happen?
What? That's what changed. When I first started, I was like, oh, any brand that wanted to work with me, I was,
Yeah.
up for it for the most part. If
Yeah.
it had to do with food and it was available and wasn't super, weird, then
Yeah.
I was totally willing to. But as we concluded, this right now actually is right where we hit our 1 year in blogging. Everything back in October, right before I came to the Chopped conference, is when everything changed, and I decided that in order for me, blogging takes a lot of work, and there's so many different facets of it, and it's really difficult at first to have to wear so many different hats. And I realized that in order to sustain it, I needed to be passionate. And that's really when it's not about working with brands anymore. I wanted to start speaking into an audience and to start being passionate about an area that I could bring some value. And I started listening to Pat Flynn, and I think you listen to him too, right?
I do. Yeah.
He is awesome.
Yeah.
And so if you're a new blogger, I totally encourage you to listen to Pat Flynn.
It's a smart passive income podcast. If anybody's interested, it's a great podcast.
Yes. And he talks so much about bringing value, and when you bring value, you will monetize, as opposed to focusing on monetizing and making value secondary. And so that really changed my mindset, because I realized I want to be passionate and I want to put a lot of effort into the work that I do, and I want to make a difference, and I wanted it to be worth something. And so instead of it being about the brands, I wanted to start putting value into my work and into the audience that I was creating it for.
I think that is such a great tip, Mariah. And it kind of reminds me of the interview I had with Amy Lynn Andrews, and I'm going to probably not get the actual podcast number right, but well, and that doesn't matter. I'll leave the link in the show notes page. But Amy Lynn Andrews loves to talk about how important it is to like kind of own your niche and to become the source that people want to go to for that. And I think, like you say, that's probably when you have the best chance of really monetizing your blog.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And when I started, I didn't know that. And so though this year has been so successful, and I think with success, you want to hold on to it because it makes you feel good. And it's been so good, because when I started, everyone was like, oh, is that blogging thing going to work for you? And now I've been able to say, yes, it has worked. And we decided to stop our current blog. And I had made this decision in the beginning of October. And I worked through November and December because I had commitments prior. But starting this month, we're working on a whole new blog and a whole new platform. And our goals this time, and I say our because it's going to be my husband and I together working on it. It's going to be our blog. And I'm really excited about that too, because he makes a really great business partner. His whole schooling and background is in entrepreneurship. So he's just the perfect person to do it with.
Yeah.
And our whole point now is not to try to work so hard and get our numbers up for brands, but to get our message across and to help other people. And if there's a brand that comes along that meshes well with that message, then absolutely that they could partner with us. But we're definitely not working for brands anymore. That's not our mission or goal. So that's kind of where this whole year has led us to.
Well, thanks for clarifying that, because actually that was what I was going to ask you, because you said, you're kind of making a shift and wanting to be, more about a thought leader in this area. And I was just curious what that meant for you. Like how does that look different than what you have been doing?
So before blogging was there's so many things you have to do that when it comes to the recipes, I was just choosing what I wanted to do. There was no rhyme or reason. Sometimes I would look at the holiday or, and plan out some Christmas things or Valentine's. But other than that, it was just if I wanted to make pasta that week and had an idea for that, I would make that. If it was cookies. And I really started doing a lot of baked goods because it was easier for me to shoot with my daughter during the day. Yes. I was finding that doing baked goods it was just so much easier than having to prepare pastas and twirl it and get the right temperature and, just
Yeah.
all the things that went into that. And there was like no nutritional values on my website or anything like that. But behind the scenes, my husband and I have been trying to live a really healthy life. And the blog was actually completely derailing that because I was so busy with all these baked goods that it was like, here's cake for dinner. And um, yeah, and
Yeah.
it was just, I finally had a breakdown because it was like, I think that blogging is the most wonderful thing, especially food blogging. I love how you can sit down with a computer and a camera and your creativity and you can actually create a profession out of it. I think that
Yeah.
that's just an amazing, wonderful thing. And there's really no other job like it. But I also think that you have to make it to where it's a lifestyle and not this job that you're working 60,
Yeah.
70 hours a week. And blogging, I've started to realize is a vehicle for us to not only live a life of what we're passionate about, but also to achieve our goals and then to help other people do the same. And I realized that the vehicle I had created wasn't going to do that for us. We wanted to help others. And by me just throwing up recipes and not having a niche and not saying this is where I stand and this is where I want to lend to the marketplace, um, really it was difficult. And so that's when we said we need to start over. And it really was from a passion standpoint and wanting to be able to have the time because my family comes first even before the blog. And I wanted to be able to spend more time with them. And when I'm constantly pushing for brand numbers, I just didn't feel like I would ever be able to do that for them.
Mariah, it sounds to me a little bit like an authenticity thing. You wanted your blog to represent who you are as a person.
It was a huge authenticity thing. And believe it or not, you were part of the inspiration for that
Ah,
because I remember listening to the Chop podcast. I started listening, I think when you were on episode 2, I remember we had a road trip out to Vegas and I was like, yeah, one of my foodie friends told me about this podcast. We're going to listen to it. And you've always talked about authenticity. And I think all of us at some point get there in our lives where we need to be authentic, where we
yeah.
can't just keep running a hamster wheel. We have to find who we truly are. And you helped with that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to know that, my journey of curiosity on that topic has helped you. That's really great.
It really has. I'm so thankful.
Oh, that's so cool. And I really do think there's a lot to, there's a lot of reward. It's almost like I think authenticity can be like a treasure chest. It's something that you hunt for and search, and then you open it up and you're so, I think you're just blessed in so many ways when you find it.
I love that. And I think it does. It pays off. If you stick to that, I think that you will see the results huge. I mean, it's
Yeah.
leaps and bounds.
You know what I heard at the end of the year? I was listening to some podcast, and I wish I could remember the name of it. But anyway, the whole point of the interview was how you could be more of yourself. And so, in other words, one of my goals for 2016 is to be more of me.
Yes,
Not to be like
that
this side or that side, or to be like that podcast or that, but to be more of me. Is that kind of cool?
yes. Yes, that is so good. It's true. That's what we need more of because
Yes.
you get on social media and you get on podcasts and you see, oh, this person does this and this person
Yes.
does that. And I need to be that too. And it's like,
Uh-huh.
no, you don't. Be the best you can be.
Yes. Be the best you can be. I love that. That's so good. So are going to be open about the name? Or are you still in the plan? You're still working on it and you're not going to be open about the new website?
We have our whole concept down. We have
Okay.
no name. I'm open to suggestions, but we really, we were pretty healthy before we had our daughter, and with the blog, and my husband's works really long hours with his job, and with our daughter, we really struggled with staying healthy and with being fit. And the food blog actually derailed that even more.
Yeah.
And we just woke up one day and said, this isn't working.
Yeah.
And why we have, this is my business. We can change it.
Right.
And really wanting to be authentic. And so our new blog is going to be about fitness and about health. And it's going to be still primarily a food blog, but we're going to work on, putting together programs for married couples and families. And that is our niche. It's totally toward married couples
Wow.
because I think that when you're dating, you still have a lot of free time, or when you're a single person. But I think once you get married, and especially when you have kids, your time becomes really crunched, and being healthy is really, really difficult. So our passion is to help other people live that life, and that allows us to do what we want to do too. It's just that we'll be living a life that we want to live and showing other people how we do that. And I was really inspired by Pat Flynn because he wanted to make a passive income online. And so he said, I'm going to teach people how to make a passive income. So by teaching people what he was already doing, he was able to really make a successful business. And so we talked about, well, what lifestyle? We looked at our life in 10 years and counted back and said, okay, well, if that's where we want to be in 10 years, what vehicle do we need to take to get there? What kind of time do we want? And passive income was huge. We really wanted passive income, and pursuing brands didn't seem like the way to go with that.
Right.
So this allowed us to not only take a stand in the marketplace, and there's really actually not a lot for couples out there. So we're really excited about it.
Yes.
And also because it allows us to create programs that will be digital products. I've loved the idea of digital products because you work very hard on them, but once they're up, and you update them as needed, but they're there, and you can continue to make an income and not have to continue to put in the work, and that gives you that time with your family. So we're going more in that direction and taking charge of it as a business standpoint and focusing on our business, our brand, not other brands.
Oh, I can't wait to learn more about it as you become more public and you got your site, and I can't wait to find out more about it.
It's definitely harder to put all the work in, and to sit down and say, I'm going to build a brand, and to niche yourself and then stick within that niche. It was so much easier when I spent a year just saying, oh, I'm going to make this, I'm going to do that, and this sounds good.
Yeah.
So it's been challenging, but I think it's going to be worth it.
But you have under your belt a year of building a very successful blog. So you have to that has to, give some confidence to you in that regard.
Yes, it has. It has helped a lot. And that's what I had told my husband when we decided all this. I said, if we did it once, I can do it again. And look at how far we've come in 1 year. Just think, if we make this change now, how much further that we could go.
That's awesome. So let's go back to a couple of tips for people who may be also in their first year, or at least, maybe even their first couple of years, but they're still, striving to get success, or, trying to take things to the next level. Do you have any tips for people that may be in that spot?
Yes. Well, for me, it was about a routine. So if you're one of those people, I totally suggest trying to systematize what you do. Blogging is a lot, and there's a lot of different facets of it. So I encourage you to get a routine for yourself to the best of your ability. If it's that you have a shopping day one day, and to have different shooting days and different writing days, so that you're not coming to the end of the week with no posts and nothing done. That really helps me a lot. And the second one was to make measurable goals, not to just say, oh, I want a big successful food blog. For me, I committed when I first started that I was going to do 3 posts on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays every single week. And I always did, except if a brand asked me to change the date. But other than that, it was always those 3 days, and I was just consistent, and that really helps me a lot. And I was really confused with social media. I had, especially with Instagram, because I would go on and see so many people had so many different followers.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that, I would encourage giveaways are really good, and committing, I'm going to spend 15 minutes a day finding other food blogs and commenting and building relationships on there, genuine relationships. If you find something, not just say, looks good, but what you really think, and people notice if you're being authentic. So if you take 15 or 20 minutes a day and just to do that, I think that really helps with Instagram. And as far as sponsored posts go, if you're struggling reaching out to brands because of your numbers, then try those. There's like a Collective Bias. I know that there's Clever Girls. There's a couple different ones that work with food bloggers that will get you in with brands and they don't push your numbers as much, and that'll get you some experience.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's easy to compare yourself to some of these big, huge bloggers that get millions of page views every month. But if you can add up all your numbers, like, maybe you don't have 100,000 page views, but you have, 50,000 followers on Pinterest, or you've got, 2,000 people who are on your email list. I mean, those are kinds of, if you add all those numbers up, then that's when you can, start to feel like you've got a more impressive media kit.
Yeah, not only that, but just looking at that there's different values for us. Our
Yeah.
food photography, thanks to my husband, I can't take the credit. He's the
Oh,
one who taught me, was pretty good starting out.
yeah.
And brands were willing to work with us because of the food photography. So if you have a strength in nutrition and nutrition's your background, then they may want to work with you solely for that purpose, that they want that. Especially with the healthier brands, or if it's your food photography, then use that. Like, put together a really nice portfolio of your pictures, and you'd be surprised how much they have to pay to get photos like that. So they would be willing to pay you a lot regardless of your page views. It's not always about the numbers. You have to look at your other talents and see, okay, I could provide a lot of value here and a lot of
Yeah.
value here.
That's great. Know your value. That's so important. I know a lot of bloggers get traffic from Pinterest. Do you have any specific strategies with Pinterest that helped you?
Oh, I've tried so many different things with Pinterest. I sometimes I think it works, and I'll have something do really well, and then it stops. But a couple of different things that I've done. If you go on Food Gawker and you go click on like the top 20 posts and you go and pin those things to your boards, those are usually things that are already doing really well or trending. And for what I've noticed, a lot of other bigger bloggers do it too, and that will bring you followers, or I've noticed that it does.
Yeah.
So that one is a good one. And having really specific boards, like, don't try to do anything fancy, just people, simple, like breads and muffins, or if
Yeah.
it's, healthy breakfast, or and putting those keywords into the description, that really helps. You'd be surprised how many followers will just be looking for those things and will come and follow you because you have a really good board
Yes.
on those specific topics. And making sure that as many of your photo covers can be a picture of your image, like from your blog, as possible. If it fits, then that really is a good thing too.
So in other words, don't forget to share your own content amongst the other content that you're sharing as well.
Yes.
That's great. Okay, so I love asking this question, so I have to ask you this too, and that is, can you talk about the process? Let's say you've got you just made some brownies, and you're going to share that post. What are the kind of the steps that you go through in preparing a blog post?
Okay. So once I've done all my food for the week and I've shot them, then I'll sit down and I will just write out just the post, the body of the post. And then after that, I usually spend a couple minutes thinking of the meta description, because I know that that's important for SEO, and just using as many foodie type words as possible, really good descriptive words. If it's buttery, if it's
Yeah.
creamy, if it's sour, sweet, whatever I can put together, making sure to use all my keywords and put that in with the post. I'll put that in every single picture. If you're using WordPress, you want to put that in your alt description. And then from there, I usually go and make the pin and put that in. And I have a little checklist, make sure that after the post is written, the pictures are in, the pin, and then I make sure it's scheduled out, make sure all the categories. I just go through my little checklist, and then I have never been one to get really ahead. I know lots of people can get like a month ahead. For me, a week out is all I've ever been able to do. So I just try to make sure by Sunday night that my 3 posts for the following week are completely done. And then I have my husband proofread everything. And sometimes there's still a couple mistakes. So if you catch a mistake on my blog, I'm sorry. But yeah, and then from there, I will spend time. I try to not share everything in one day and spam everything. I know that different people are on different channels at different times. So in order to optimize that I'm reaching a lot of different people, I won't go and just my post is up, I'm going to go post to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter all at the same time. I will try to say, okay, I'm going to post to Instagram, and then a couple hours later, or maybe even that night or the next day, I'll do Twitter. And that way, if the follower is on two at the same time, they're not getting spammed. And also so that I'm reaching different people at different times, because I know that there's different time zones and people are in different places and different lunch breaks and stuff. So I try to make sure that I'm sharing at different times.
Ah, that's good. So it sounds like you kind of batch some of your work. And that's so smart, I think.
Yeah, it really helps. Otherwise, you just go crazy, and not having a system, you'll forget things. It's so easy with blogging. There's so many different tasks. So having a system really helps.
Yes, I agree. And I love that. It sounds like you and I have a similar process, I think, as far as you like to come up with ways to systematize. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, because there is no system, everybody, there's no system. It's blogging, and, everybody does it differently. And know that you can take tips from other people, but it's okay if theirs doesn't work for you. What works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. It's okay.
I can't tell you how many times I've spent, like, I'm trying to do it exactly the way someone else describes how they do it, because I don't have a process. And then, like, wait a minute, I can create my own process.
Yeah, if it doesn't work, then try something else. It's okay.
Yes. So Mariah, what's coming up next for you? Anything that you can share?
Just the new blog. We're plugging away. We actually, one more tip that I recommend, if you are looking to get into products with your blog at all, if you have a really good niche or niche, however you say it, then I recommend, it's called Ask by Ryan Levesque.
I just saw that book. I actually was just looking at that. That's cool. Ask.
It is so good.
Really?
It will tell you exactly how to really get into your target audience. He does a lot of stuff through surveys, which is really good, because a lot of people think that they have a good idea and then they just do it without getting any feedback at all. And I think they lose a lot that way. I did the whole first year of blogging because I didn't ask. And when I started asking, what do you want to see? What would be best for you? And really helped you find your target market and how to get the most for them, and in turn gets the most for you. And I love that he really supports that. The best way is to make sure that you're doing everything you can for your audience, and that gets you the return instead of looking to get the most for yourself.
And it's such a balancing act to play, because it's easy to, you're spending time, you're trying to monetize things, and you can easily, flip over to the side of only worrying about your needs and forget about your audience. So it's really good to keep that balance.
Yes, and he helps you, if, like I said, if you are interested in doing any kind of products on your blog, he teaches you how to build out a whole sales funnel, and it's the model that we're going to be using on our blog. It's so creative, and he really helps you with email marketing, which I've always struggled with.
Yes.
So it's a must read. If you're going to go into products in any sort of way on your blog, then go read Ask by Ryan Levesque.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for that tip. That's a really good one. Okay, so here we are at the end of the interview. So I've just got a couple of fun questions for you. What's one food item you can't live without?
Oh my goodness. Greek yogurt. I eat 2 things of Greek yogurt every day.
Really? Just plain, or do you have fruit in them, or what?
I do every morning. I do the light and fit Dannon ones in every flavor, and then in the middle of the afternoon, I take the Fage, just plain Greek yogurt, and I mix in a tablespoon of sugar-free jam, or Truvia jam, and then raspberries. That's like my other big food I can't live without is raspberries. When I was little, I would go out to restaurants and just ask for like a bowl of raspberries.
Wow, how many restaurants have that available?
Not very many, but my parents would make sure that on birthdays that we would go places that would have raspberries. My siblings would steal them all, so I used to hide them in the fridge. And I loved just raspberries. So the places that did, we'd always go. The Disneyland Hotel, we lived close to there, and they always brought me raspberries.
Oh, that's really good. I love raspberries too. They're so I like them because I like fruit that doesn't have all that sweet to it, and it sounds like you're maybe the same way.
Yeah, they're a low glycemic fruit, which is good. Or is it?
That's good to know.
They won't spike your blood sugar.
Is that your
I always
interest?
get confused.
Is that your interest in Greek yogurt too? Is that it's low sugar?
Yes, I in the high protein content. I really like that it's a really good high protein content. So I love Greek yogurt.
Okay, so what's the favorite app on your phone?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I love my Fitness Pal. I go on there several times a day and
I have
track
that
all
app
my
too.
stuff. Yeah, it's helpful,
Yeah.
especially when you're starting at the beginning of the year. We're trying to reset everything. So I've been on it a lot more lately.
Do you use it to track like your exercise and your calories and all of that?
I don't really track the exercise part, but I just track the calories, and I'm really just interested in the macronutrients. My sister
Yeah.
had a lot of success tracking that, so I'm just trying it out. I have enjoyed being able to see how much protein, carbs, and fat I get every day, and try to stay within a certain number, and then mess around with it if I'm feeling fatigued or if I feel like I'm getting too much, lowering it. Just kind of trying to figure out my own plan for
I
myself.
think that's such an important thing to point out that it doesn't have to always be just about the calories. It does give you information on how much fiber you've consumed and sugars and all of that. So it's a great app.
Oh, it's so good. And it's totally, hit the nail on the head there. It is not always about the calories.
Yes. Although that being said, after the Christmas holiday, I had calorie creep. Let me say it that way.
Oh, me too. Me too. We ate so much
Like a wake
food.
up call. Like, oh, okay, I can't eat the whole plate now, huh?
Yeah, we did that several nights. It was like a 2-week holiday extravaganza.
Yes, exactly. And now it's like January, so we have to get back on track.
Yes, yeah, and it actually feels good to get back on track.
It does. I totally agree. It's interesting how much better I feel when I'm back on track, and yet somehow I start to resist that. I don't understand it.
I know, it's just how we are.
Yes, it's like I really do feel like we have a tendency to crave and be attracted to comfort. It's like it would be the thing that would make me want to wear my PJs all day long. But in reality, we need, not like a bad kind of stress, but we need like I need to put my jeans on so I don't, I feel better when I'm dressed up a little bit more or something like that.
Yes, yes. And once you do it, you do feel really good. It's just
Yeah.
getting there.
Yes, that's so true. Okay, so you sound like you're so busy, but I'm just curious, do you have any time for TV at all? And if you do, what's your favorite show?
Oh goodness. We don't. I like my little treat after once Stella gets to bed, which is our daughter, she's 1 and she keeps me very busy. So I stay home with her. So working and taking care of her is a full-time job.
Yes.
But at night, I like to just watch 15 or 30 minutes of the Food Network or HGTV, and then I'm happy. I feel like I got my rest me time for the day.
Yeah. Okay, so what's your favorite HGTV show?
Oh, I love Fix or Flop. Is it?
Yeah.
No, is it? Wait, hold on. There's the one with the couple that's in Texas. What is it?
Oh,
I'm totally
that's
blanking
a
on the
Fixer
name.
Upper.
Fixer Upper,
I'm
and then
like,
Flipper
I
Flop.
love that show.
Fixer Upper is the cutest. I love that couple. I just love, yeah, Chip and Joanne. They're great.
Chip and Joanne, yes, yes. I
They're
followed them on
so
Instagram.
cute. Do you? I
Yes.
should do that. I love them. They're so awesome.
Yeah.
So that's like my favorite. And Food Network, I will just watch anything. I just sit there and drool over everything. I love the what's it called? Is it called Guilty Pleasures? And then The Best Thing I Ever Ate. They go like around to different places, and the Food Network stars talk about the best cheesy item or the best pasta item or whatever it is, and that always makes me hungry. So right before bed, I have such great habits.
Okay, Mariah, so how can people find you online?
Well, for now, you can find me at the blog at mariahspleasingplates.com. And then I am Mariah's Pleasing Plates on Instagram, Mariah's Pleasing Plates on Facebook, and then it's Mariah Mercurio on Twitter.
Wonderful. Mariah, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you, Marley. I had a blast.
Thanks to Mariah Mercurio for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. If you were busy out working out at the gym and couldn't jot down something important, don't worry, we took the notes for you. Just head over to choppedcon.com where we put up links for each show, including the stuff we talked about today and more information about our guests. I hope you're loving the Chopped podcast. If so, it would mean the world to me if you'd head over to iTunes or Stitcher and give it a review. Also, you can spread the word about the Chopped podcast using @ChoppedCon on Twitter, on Instagram, or even Facebook. Your shout-outs really mean a lot, and we read every one. You inspire me, so I hope today's show has been helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.